I do offer an opportunity to meet separately, and that is actually a QR code that functions. If you decided that you wanted to meet with me and just have me audit your page, happy to do that. I've audited hundreds of Facebook pages for funeral homes, so it's a pretty revealing session because also in that session, we look at some of the other pages in your market, and then we also look at pages of funeral homes that you know. And and this is a new service that we offer. This is a very inexpensive service if that was something that you were interested in doing. And we're just doing a kind of a trial process to see if there's some interest in this nationally. But it's called Quick Start, and that information's on our website as well. So let's get into today's session. What do you see when you think about the foyer of your funeral home on the screen in your mind? What do you see when you think about your main visitation room on the screen in your mind? And what do you think about, what do you see when you think about your chapel on the screen in your mind? Well, as I was going through your foyer and your visitation room in your chapel, I guarantee you, you saw a picture in your mind. Dr. William Glasser, who is the late celebrated psychiatrist, said, "We think in pictures and we speak in words. We think in pictures and we speak in words." Now, if you took the download that Jen talked about at the beginning of our session, that will have our key words, that's the answer to the first question. We think in pictures. And the reason I want you to use this card is really simple. You may forget 80 to 90% of what we talk about by the end of the day today. And a week from now, you may have forgotten almost everything we talked about. By writing down the keywords in this session, this is a card you can always refer to and come back to, and it will remind you of a lot of the things we discussed today. So my question is, if we think in pictures, when a consumer thinks about your funeral home, what pictures do they see? Do they see a picture that looks like this? Go hiking in a rainforest? And by the way, this is a legitimate Facebook post for a funeral home. And the question I always ask when I see these types of posts is, what does that have to do with a funeral home and the funeral process? So did they see a picture that looks like that? Or did they see a picture of a trusted funeral professional? Maybe somebody who is standing in a chapel where a life will be celebrated. Do they see a picture that looks like this? You deserve it. Enjoy Chocolate Day. Again, another post that I found by a funeral home on Facebook. Does that fit your business? Or does this fit your business? A funeral professional who can help you pre-plan a funeral. What my experience has been with funeral homes who only post obituaries or do nothing at all, my worry is the picture they see is no picture at all. This session is about how to be known, how to be trusted, and how to be celebrated on Facebook. So this is my book. It's called How Facebook Works for Funeral Homes, and a lot of my content comes from this book. And so it's available on Amazon.com right now. I'm not trying to sell my book, but the book has a tremendous amount of content. And again, please use this card as we go along. Again, I think it will be very beneficial to you to help you to have the keywords available to you in the future. If I asked 50 funeral professionals what social media is, I think I get 50 different answers. But if I ask the same 50 funeral professionals what local advertising is, I think I get the same answers. Television, radio, cable television, and the newspaper. But there is a media that's perceptually missing. It's the media that reaches 70% of all adults in your market. It's the media that reaches 73% of adults 50 to 64, 77%, 3 out of 4 women, and half the market 60 plus, 65 plus. There's no TV station, there's no radio station, There's no cable television franchise and there's no newspaper that's bigger in your market than Facebook. Facebook is the biggest local media in every market in America. And what we're talking about today is effective local advertising. It's the kind of advertising that's designed to expand your visibility in your community, expand the reputation of your brand, and hopefully expand your business. All right. So, what is Facebook? What is Facebook? And when I finish this piece, you'll be able to answer that question in 2 words. Now, this is a graph that shows you the newspaper advertising revenue from 1950 to the year about 2016. And you can see in the year 2000, the newspaper reached its height, $67 billion as a media in advertising sales in the United States. It was ginormous. The newspaper was just stinking big. And, you know, an example of how big it was, if you got your picture in the paper, everybody saw it. This is my picture being in the paper. And this picture is 56 years old. Just to give you an idea how old I am. This is a 56-year-old picture, but I still have it. Because when that picture came out in the paper, everyone saw it. Everyone saw it in the newspaper. All my friends at school saw it. Everybody my dad worked with, everybody my mom worked with, everybody saw it. Why? Why? And the answer is Facebook. I mean, the newspaper was just big. Do you remember how wide it was? Do you remember how tall it was? Do you remember how thick it was? It was an unbelievably large publication. In some markets, it came out twice a day. It's why we recycle. We didn't start recycling because we thought it would help the environment. We started recycling because that stack of newspapers in the garage was obscene, and you just couldn't imagine just throwing it away. Of course, you know, a lot of people who worked in the newspaper industry, when they were selling you advertising, talked about how big the sports page was or the business page was. The obituary column was the most read page in the newspaper. It's just you can't sell recliners on the obituary column. But it was a huge, highly read page every day. Why? Why? And the answer is the obituary column represented powerful local news. It's the kind of local news that may not be on all the radio and TV stations in the market, but you know, if somebody dies, it's big news. It really is. Also, though, and this is an interesting fact, the obituary column represented a daily market survey. The bigger funeral homes got the most ink, the smaller funeral homes, not so much. And some funeral homes didn't have an obituary at all. And that told consumers it was a daily visual reminder of who people trusted the most. But guess what? The newspaper is gone. The obituary column is gone with it. In fact, only 3%, and this is probably high now, 3% of adults say that they get their news from the newspaper as their main source. So what happened? Where'd they go? Well, there's 2 things that are noteworthy that you can point to. In 2006, Facebook started its service. And in 2007, the iPhone was Time Magazine's invention of the year. And if you go back and look at the graph, right around then, you can see newspaper ad sales fell off a cliff. And the reason it fell off a cliff is because they lost their readers. Where did they go? They went to Facebook. And so what we can tell you is Facebook is the newspaper. So when somebody asks you what Facebook is, the real answer is it's the newspaper. The newspaper. Now, for some of you who may not be that familiar with Facebook, this is time for the Facebook dictionary. And the first. All right, so we're continuing how to be known, how to be trusted, and how to be celebrated on Facebook. Well, Paula Lau is my second funeral home client, and uh, we started working on their Facebook page together. And it was at a time when I really didn't know a whole lot about what to put on Facebook. This was 8 years ago. And Paula's husband, Jim, who passed away about 2.5 years ago of COVID, Jim was a remarkable funeral home owner and funeral director. And when I asked him what made his funeral home unique, without any hesitation, he said it was his people. And so, not completely knowing what to do, I started taking pictures of people, people standing in foyers, people standing next to lecterns, people in visitation rooms, or people in chapels. And where Paula and I were worried about, are we depressing the market and should we do something different? We started to have a conversation about this concept called a deathless topic. A deathless topic. You know, National Chocolate Day is a deathless topic. If we were to look at other things happening today, and there are firms on Facebook pages that post what day of the year it is, and they're all silly. It doesn't make any sense. If you're trying to position yourself as a business that is to be trusted at one of the most crucial times in someone's life, should you be posting an ad for a good hair day? Because that's what today is. Today is good hair day. You see, 364 days of the year, our hair is just okay. But today, it's good. Or how about this? Wear a hat day. Wear a hat day right here in Alabama. This has been tough, especially yesterday. We had gale force winds all evening long. Wear a hat day. So what?
That's exactly right, especially in Mississippi last night.
Yeah. And then, of course, Leonard Nimoy, the late Leonard Nimoy, live long and prosper day. All you Star Trek fans out there. Well, we could have done something like that. But what we figured out was we had about a 60-day period of time where we just did posts based on using faces, and content was on about death in the funeral process. And it was almost like our own focus groups. And what we figured out was Facebook users were liking what we were doing. They were loving what we were doing, and they were making comments. What were they saying? They were praising individual funeral directors for services provided months a year ago. They were expressing gratitude. They were thankful that they were there. And so what we figured out is Facebook users love their funeral homes. And so step one of this process of how to be known, trusted, and celebrated on Facebook is simply this: use pictures of faces on Facebook. And put that on your keyword card. Use pictures of faces on Facebook. Simple idea. It's really interesting to me too. I think we're the only firm in America that does that on social media for our customers. How to be known, how to be trusted, and how to be celebrated on Facebook. So we got the first step right. What's the second one? What do you say? What do you say? I know that when I wrote my first book, How Facebook Works for Funeral Homes, that was one of the biggest questions that everybody had. They didn't know what to say. I mean, writing an ad for a funeral home is not easy. I spent a lot of time when I first began my practice trying to figure out what to say. And in my book, the back half of the book is all about topics to use in advertising, not only on Facebook, but also on television and radio. Well, after about 6 months of work, I took all the ads that I had written, printed them out, and cut them up, and I placed them in little stacks to see what I was basically writing about. And what ended up happening is I had a number of stacks that became topics. And so knowing the topic to write about for a funeral home is a whole lot easier than just writing an ad for a funeral home. So write that down. Knowing the topic makes it easier to write a post. Knowing the topic makes it easier to write a post. So here are some topics that seem to resonate well with funeral homes and with users. Funeral director branding is one of them. And these posts are all about what funeral directors do and why they're so important in the funeral process. And this is the way a funeral director branding ad can read. When surviving family members embrace the funeral process, they can begin to see a glimmer of hope. Hope the hurting will soften and hope the healing will begin. That's what funeral directors like Andy Huffine help families see at Ridge Funeral Home. And think about it. It may be hard to write an ad for a funeral home, but writing an ad for a funeral director should be a lot easier, especially if you know what a funeral director does, which most of you do. Topic 2 is funeral assistant branding. It's the same idea. And you'd always be surprised how some of the most popular people in your firm are not necessarily your full-time employees. Office administrators are incredibly popular. Even therapy dogs. Here's Daisy at her old funeral home in Blackwood, New Jersey. The moment the immediate family realizes they're with their loved one for the last time, somebody has to be there and somebody has to care. At Fair Funeral Home, that's somebody like Assistant Funeral Director Charles Fair. Topic 3 is pre-planning. This is brand advertising. It's not direct marketing. We're not sending these directly to homes, but it's always amazing to me when somebody starts using posts like this and all of a sudden somebody walks in the funeral home and pre-plans a funeral because they advertised it. Even when it's expected, death has a way of surprising us. Pre-planning brings clarity to the funeral process so that when it's time to celebrate a life, there are no surprises. I wrote that post after my mother died. And the thing about it was, Mom was in hospice care for 5 months. And when she died and I got the phone call, it was a surprise. It was a surprise. Zig Ziglar, who was the famous sales, motivational, positive thinking guy in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and the early 2000s, he describes sales as a transference of a feeling. Sales is a transference of a feeling. And these types of posts that feature faces of funeral home employees, along with topics that are about death in the funeral process, clearly convey and transfer a feeling. So, step number 1 of 3, Facebook users love their funeral homes, so we use pictures of faces on Facebook. Step number 2 is what do you say? What do you say? And now step 3 is boosting posts. Boosting posts. And I like to do this piece. It's called How Advertising Works. And this is all about the 4 pillars of effective local advertising. Now, anything with 4 pillars, like a table or a chair, it needs all 4 legs. It needs all 4 pillars. If you take one of them away, the chair doesn't work, the table doesn't work, and in advertising, your advertising doesn't work. You have to do all 4 things correctly. And what we used to do in broadcasting is if we had a customer talk to us about a campaign that didn't work, it was usually because one or more of the 4 pillars wasn't covered. So here's what they are: reach, frequency, consistency, and copy. Reach, frequency, consistency, and copy. Write that down in your keywords. The 4 pillars of effective local advertising are reach, frequency, consistency, and copy. I had to be in radio for 23 years before somebody told me this. And then since they told me that, now I knew how to get results for customers. So boosting posts, when we talk about boosting posts, most funeral home Facebook pages rely on organic reach. Remember, organic means free. So without boosted posts, their pages may only reach about 500 to 1,500 users a month. Essentially, nobody is seeing your content. And if nobody is seeing your content, why bother? Why bother? I mean, it's a mystery. In fact, there's some funeral home pages, and I've seen them, and maybe you have one, where they have all these beautiful images from a third party, all these beautiful posts on Facebook, but nobody sees them. They represent a mirage. In other words, the funeral home thinks they're doing a great job with social media, but the end user doesn't see it. Reach, reach. How many people do you need to reach to expand your business? I guarantee if I asked 100 funeral directors that question, I would get 100 funeral directors that would not know how to calculate this number. How many people do you need to reach to expand your business? You have to begin with the CDC death rate. And so, according to the CDC death rate, it's about 867 per 100,000 will die. That's older adults, that's babies. So, using that number, we've created a reach calculator on our website, postandboost.com/reach. There's a video on there that will help you better understand what reach is all about. So, for example, if you're doing 250 calls a year to maintain your business, you should be reaching about 15,000 consumers every 30 days. And a consumer is going to be an adult over the age of 35. But now, if you wanted to grow, let's say you wanted to grow by 20%, you wanted to do 300 calls a year, then you might want to consider reaching 18 to 20,000 users a month. This chart will give you a better range of that. So if you look in the left column and see the calls per year that you want, then on the right side, look for the range of consumers that you need to reach consistently to accomplish that goal. Write it down. Write it down on your card. And the way to look at it, if you want to be doing 300 calls a year, your advertising should consistently be reaching 19 to 22,000 consumers a month. Okay. Frequency. How many times should a consumer see your ad in a month? Well, we're not selling pizza pies and we're not selling hamburgers. We're not selling cars. We're not selling furniture. But if you think about a funeral home ad on Facebook, the number that we see, the number that we think makes sense is about 3 to 6 times per month, or about one a week. Now that's polite. A lot of customers rather, when we first start working with them, because we do 3 posts a week, have a perception, oh, that's too many. But you know what? Here's the deal. If you have a Facebook page with page likes and users like your page and then they like your post, they're going to see every post that you publish. But those aren't the people you're trying to reach. You're trying to reach the people that you don't know. And from that perspective, 3 to 6 times per month is about right. Consistency. The familiar is normal and the normal is trusted. Marketers forget this daily. That's Seth Godin, who wrote the book called This is Marketing. This fast becoming a Bible of marketing guidelines for any business. Consistent advertising builds an equity position in the mind of the consumer. And if you're always open, you should always be advertising. So that's consistency. Copy is the last one. And what we do is we create new posts with new pictures. So there's Heather at Forbes and Dick Funeral Service in Greensboro, North Carolina. So we shave a new picture, and then we change the copy. So we change the words. Families considering cremation find comfort when they include traditional funeral services. A visitation and celebration of life benefit everyone in the healing process. Make sense? So this is how we do it. This is what we do at Post and Boost. So I consider buying advertising on Facebook a quiet storm. If you think about it, if you're buying ads in the old newspaper, or maybe you're buying billboards, or you're buying TV ads, or your competition can see or hear or watch what you're doing. But if you're advertising on Facebook, they will not know what you're doing. They may look at your page and see, oh, they're doing a good job with their social media, but they may have no perception that you are advertising your business effectively. Now, The Consumer's Journey to Purchasing Funeral Services is actually the title for my new book that will be released in July of this year. And if you come to NFDA in New Orleans, I'm speaking on it both Monday and Tuesday during the International Convention and Expo. But this is a great piece because it describes the sales funnel. This is the funeral sales funnel. And so what I do is when I talk about the funeral sales funnel, I talk about a dream car. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I know it happened to me. I always dreamed about owning a black, big Chevy Suburban. When I spoke in Saratoga, New York last year, one of the folks wanted a red Mercedes. And so when somebody makes a decision to buy a red Mercedes and then they buy the red Mercedes, guess what they see? They see that car everywhere. It's everywhere. Why? Why? Well, we talk about the power of your subconscious mind. In other words, you have a conscious brain and a subconscious brain. And so your conscious brain, where you're able to reason and you're able to use it to think or interact with people. Your subconscious mind, well, it is incredibly powerful. And what happens is the subconscious mind remembers everything. It's like a big filing cabinet. And so write that down. Your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is dedicated to bringing into your life what you're thinking about most of the time. Let me say that again. Your subconscious mind is dedicated to bringing into your life what you're thinking about most of the time. If somebody came to you and said you're going to die in 6 months, if somebody came to you and said your mom is going to die in 6 months, what do you think about when you wake up? What do you think about when you go to sleep? And what do you think about all day? And the answer is death. And if that's what you're thinking about most of the time, then your subconscious mind is going to be on for seeing, reading, watching, or purposefully remembering a funeral home ad. Forbes magazine used this metaphor to describe the power of the subconscious mind. If the subconscious mind was a Ferrari, then the conscious mind was a skateboard. That's quite a metaphor, but it will show you how important it is the subconscious mind is in the advertising realm. Psychology Today says it like this: imagine for a moment that your subconscious mind is like a giant filing cabinet, repeatedly being exposed to radio ads, TV ads, and billboard ads with key messaging. Imagine this could influence decisions towards the advertised product or service. Oh my, it might work if you do all 4 pillars of effective local advertising. So this is a funnel. And whenever you see a funnel, the top of the funnel is wide, the bottom of the funnel is very narrow. So the awareness phase is the first phase of the funeral sales funnel. These are consumers that are in the right demographic. They may see your ads, hear your ads, watch your ads, listen to your ads. But will they purposely remember the ads? Well, probably not. It's going to be the same thing for interest. But will consumers, again, consciously read or remember your ads? The answer is no. But what you're doing is establishing an equity position in the mind of the consumer. And the same with interest. Now, a consumer who's interested in funeral services may be somebody that has a friend who has a close family member who died. They went to the funeral home for a visitation. They may have read an obituary on the website. And while they were there, kind of checked it out. So they're interested. Somebody who's interested, they're curious. They're a curious consumer. But again, just like in the awareness phase, they're not going to consciously read or consume your ads. It's when they enter the desire phase. That's when all of the advertising that you've done for weeks, months, or years, all of a sudden, cumulatively, boom, you're there. If you have a funeral director that's been seen 20 or 30 or 40 times a year on Facebook, and now all of a sudden a consumer has the desire, enters the desire phase. In other words, they have a need. Someone has come to them and said, you're going to die. Or someone has come to them and said, your mother's going to die. And all they're thinking about now is death in the funeral process. Go back to the dream car. Just like your dream car, your subconscious mind is trying to bring into your life what you're thinking about most of the time. So when this happens, when a consumer enters the desire phase, when consumers think about your funeral home, what pictures will they see? And so that's when all of a sudden they start seeing your pictures, and they may not consciously remember who it is, but their mind tells them that this person is somebody they can trust, because trust comes from repetition. And of course, the last part of the funeral sales funnel is action. And that's when they call. That's when they click. That's when they walk into your business. If your advertising is reaching 10 to 25,000 consumers 4 to 6 times a month, what will they do when it's time to take action? Will they go to Google and search on funeral home near me? Or will they go to Google and search for the name of your funeral home? And that, of course, is what you want. This is Ann Williams with Coleman Heritage in Coleman, Alabama. She tells me this great story. And this is just a few months ago, how a gentleman walked into her funeral home and wanted to pre-plan a funeral. And so she sat down with him and wrote up a contract. And when she finished, she looked at him and she said, "Why did you come here?" And he looked at her and he said, "I see your face on Facebook all the time." How to be known, how to be trusted, and how to be celebrated on Facebook. This last piece is about the celebration part, and I show the first post that we did for Green Hills Funeral Home last year. And if you look at this post, you can see 363 people liked or loved this post. You can see they made comments. Here are some of the comments. Louise said, "Absolutely the best." Betty said, "Thanks for helping my family." Amy said, "The best. I'll never forget how well they cared for my dad." And Regina said, "Cannot say enough wonderful things about this couple." Well, 88 comments were made in this post. That's 88 word of mouth ads. That's pretty doggone powerful. Jim Lau, when he passed away 2.5 years ago in Burlington, right before he passed away, I knew it was my job to inform the residents of Alamance County that Jim had died. Everybody was waiting for this post. And when it came out, it became an avalanche of connectivity for this funeral home. Here's what I wrote. Today, we sadly announce the loss of our president, Jim Lau, a wonderful and inspiring man who has touched so many families for so many years. He went home to be with the Lord on Wednesday, September 1st. Growing up in the funeral industry, this was all he ever wanted to do, to be a funeral director, and that he was. Bigger than life, gentle to all, and a friend to so many. His passion, his spirit, and his love for his family, for Lau Funeral Home, and every staff member here will forever be felt. Well, if you look at the comments about Jim, the comments were written in such a way that would only celebrate a funeral director, somebody who has deeply touched somebody who cares at the worst time in their life. This isn't the kind of comments that somebody who sells furniture gets, somebody who gave you a great deal on a car, that mechanic you could always trust, or the restaurant with a cook that you always enjoy going to. Nope. This is the kind of celebration for somebody who's committed themselves to serving families. And that's how to be known, trusted, and celebrated on Facebook. And there you go. There you go. If I can help you in any way, scan that code or just go to our website. There's all kinds of ways to connect with me on our website.